Do you believe in Rocco Becht? Because if not, then I guess I am the only one that believes in Iowa State's starting quarterback this year. Is everyone else right? Is Iowa State holding him back from going pro? We're talking about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are talking about whether or not Rocco is NFL ready, what his future could look like. Could Iowa State be holding him back? How does he fit into this whole offense? Can't wait to dive into all of that. Then we're going to break down some rankings of the Big 12, where Iowa State falls in there. I think that they may have gotten it right, but find out why in the second segment. And then finally, Jet Tamala had some comments about Iowa State. We'll talk about that and where Iowa State is currently at as far as the 2026 recruiting class goes in the final segment of today's show. But before we get that far, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So let's talk about this Rocco Becht situation. And the reason I bring this up is ESPN ranked the top quarterbacks for the NFL draft ahead of 2025 college football season. I fully expected to see Rocco Becht on this list. Maybe I am just delusional. That might be the case. I am fully willing to admit that. There's a chance that I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. The way that everyone else talks about Iowa State, it is nowhere in line with how I see it. Okay, so let's talk about these first five quarterbacks that are brought up: Cade Klubnik, Clemson, dog; Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, dog; Fernando Mendoza from Indiana, dog; Lenora Sellers, South Carolina, dog; Drew Aller, Penn State, dog. I mean, John Mateer, Oklahoma. To be honest, these are all very good players. Okay, like I'm not, and I especially say dog because I don't want to come back like, oh, you think I could throw a football better than them? Is that what you think? No, I know I couldn't. Okay, I can spin it for about 10 yards, but once you get past the first down marker, it could be going anywhere, and I mean the bleachers included. Okay, so I'm not saying I'm better than these guys. These are all very good players. But to not put Rocco on this list, I was quite shocked, okay, to say the least. And really, I wonder, what is the reasoning? Okay, we've kind of had this conversation before of when something comes out, you kind of got to look at it and say, what is the angle, right? What is the reasoning? Why was this released? Who does this benefit? What does this kind of push people to think? Why? You gotta ask yourself all these questions. And that's not so much the case from this article, right? This or this ranking. I don't think that this has really any quote unquote agenda behind it. I don't think this is like a narrative pusher or a smoke screen. We're not close to the NFL draft. We're not like in the season for a Heisman or anything like that. Like, this is so far away. I think truly that this is kind of just done in good fun. I think that this is probably just done to talk about college football. Because I'll be completely honest with you guys, I was watching some highlights earlier and I about ran through a brick wall. I am so ready for the guys to throw on the pads and run around on the gridiron. I totally get it. If that's what they got to do, make these lists, keep it interesting. But until Farmageddon hits, I get it. All right. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the actual creation of the article or of the ranking, though I do think that's something you should probably ask about every single time you read something. I think really the question lies in why isn't Rocco on this list? That's the question we have to answer. And I think the only thing I can possibly come up with is it's because Rocco is on the Iowa State Cyclones. It's the only answer I can possibly come up with. When you look at Rocco's stats last year, 271 for 456 and 3,505 yards, had a 9 interception to 25 touchdown ratio. I believe he ended the year through the final 6 games, accounting for 16 total touchdowns and only throwing 3 picks. Played very well to end the year. I don't think it's not like, oh, his stats aren't very good. I don't think it's that. He also rushed How many is this year? 318 yards on just 98 attempts for the year. So averaging almost 3.3 yards a carry there, long of 32. That's one of the things that Rocco is very, very good at that I don't think a lot of people talk about. They don't really mention. And I think it's because he doesn't really run around like a Lamar, right? He doesn't run around like a Patrick Mahomes. He does a little bit, but it's not quite the same. I think it's one of his greatest attributes is he knows when to go, and when he does, he makes it count. And he's very good at the sneak as well. I mean, we all remember UCF. So that's another angle to this whole thing. I don't think it's necessarily about his play. I do think, as much as I don't like it, Rocco playing for Iowa State is hindering kind of the perception around his play. I think if Rocco played for one of these super big box schools, these big name, undefeated, unbelievable schools, the schools that when they lose in the playoff, it was somebody else's fault. I think he'd probably be in this top 5. I really do. I think he is that good. And why do people probably think that about Rocco and Iowa State? Well, it was a one-off with Higgins and Knoll, and can he replicate that? And I get it. Last year was a very, very good year for Rocco and for Iowa State. Obviously, 11 wins, but you got to give the kid a few flowers here. Is he better than those guys? I mean, I think he's better than Drew Aller personally, at least. But it's not really so much about that. I did think the list had a weird number of guys on it, so not really sure that maybe he was next up. They're like, you know what, we're not gonna put the Iowa State guy on there. I don't love that. But as far as this coming year, can Rocco kind of prove that he's an NFL caliber quarterback? Absolutely. Absolutely. We have talked so much about the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the running backs, and how many options Iowa State has in the passing game. A lot on Farmageddon Fridays, but also just in general. I think that this passing unit is going to be so multi-threat. There's no way that there is every single play, everyone's covered type situations. It's just not possible. I think literally every play, somebody will be open. And that's how it's designed to be, right? What you're going to see is the potential for Rocco to be able to advance through his progressions and show that, which is an NFL characteristic. But also, it's going to come down to accuracy, I think, a little bit too. We'll see about that. That's a little bit kind of off the beaten path there. But I do think that really as far as how many yards does Rocco end up with this season, or how good is Rocco's quarterback play, I think a lot of it is tied to the offensive line. I think if he has time to throw, there is no shortage of talent in receivers. And I don't mean just wide receivers. I mean people that can receive the football. Wide receivers, tight ends especially. And I think guys coming out of the backfield are going to be good options as well, provided they're not staying in a pass protection set. To me, there is an abundance of talent. And the way that Mauser and Pauly are brewing up these plays and drawing everything up, I don't think that there's a doubt I know there's not a doubt in my mind. I don't think that there's even a chance that Iowa State throws for less than 4,000 yards this season. I know that's a bold take, especially with how good they were last year, and Rocco only threw for 3,500. And I do say Iowa State because, maybe somebody else comes in and throws, maybe a couple trick plays. I would like to include those as well with such a bold, huge number. But let me know. Do you think 4,000 is that too many? Because I don't know. I do. The only thing that would slow them down, the only thing that would keep them from 4,000, in my opinion, would be a stellar run game, which we also probably will have. So it's really kind of tough to know exactly how many yards they're going to end up throwing for, but it's probably going to be a lot. It's probably going to be a lot because there's just constantly going to be people open. And what does that mean? Yards. And what does that mean? First downs. What does that mean? Scores. What does that mean? Wins. Boom. Iowa State, your 2020, I guess that'd be 6 national champions. Now, that being said, you probably have to win the Big 12 or at least play pretty well in the Big 12 to become national champions. And we're going to talk about where I think Iowa State will end up in these final Big 12 rankings coming up right after this. The NBA and the summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my matchups and keep the things fresh. The app does a very good job of that with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Whether I'm placing a same game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and bet $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Athlon Sports did this ranking of the Big 12 as far as their finish in 2025. And you know, there were some previous rankings of the Big 12 and where Iowa State sat. I didn't love it. Okay. I did not love it. Iowa State was way too low, in my opinion. So I opened this up and I didn't necessarily have high hopes. Let's just say that. You're here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And like I said, when I opened this up, I was immediately like, guard was up. We gotta let's not get too psyched. Iowa State seems to be disrespected constantly in these scenarios. Luckily, I was a little bit wrong in this case. Iowa State was picked to finish fourth in this kind of simulation, this layout, if you will. The teams finishing ahead of Iowa State, Texas Tech, Arizona State, and Kansas State. And then the couple teams right behind them being Baylor, BYU, and Utah. Kansas coming in at 8 there. We don't need to go through the entire thing. I would just like to kind of talk about where should they be, right? Because Iowa State at 4, not exactly ideal. You'd probably rather have them at 1 if I had to guess, knowing you. I mean, you're a pretty big Iowa State fan. I heard it from Iowa State Superstardom Fan Town. I mean, they were talking about you. Do I think they belong at 4? No, I think they could be better than 4. Do I think that they are being disrespected at 4? No, I think that that's a reasonable ranking. To be completely honest, I don't expect anybody to rank Iowa State at number 1. I just don't think that that's what the media is kind of known to do when it comes to Iowa State. So I'm not necessarily super upset about that. Let's take a look at the teams ahead of Iowa State. Kansas State being the first team. Athlon picked Kansas State to win the Big 12. You know, Kansas State's going to be good. They are. But if Iowa State can get the win at Dublin, I don't see any reason to take Kansas State. I just don't. When you look at the schedule for Iowa State, I think they're in a very, very good spot here. You come back from, in this scenario, you come back from Dublin, you beat South Dakota probably, right? You're immediately riding the high. Then you've got Iowa, and you get to play it at home. Now, I know that maybe at home, Iowa State isn't as great against Iowa, just when you look at the recent few years. I get that. But, excuse me, throat's dry. Need my water. But ultimately, Iowa State, a far better team than Iowa, in my opinion, at least this year. We will yet to see. We have yet to see what exactly that looks like, what exactly will happen. But the way it's squaring up right now, I am not worried at all. So let's just, keep cruising. I've done this before. We've run through. I don't need to go through every single game here, but what I'm getting at is you start the season probably 3-0 and then more than likely 4-0 going into a bye. That's a great start to the year. Sets you up to go into your next 3-game slate with a lot of momentum. You're probably gonna snag the Arizona game at home. And then you go on a little 2-game road streak there just to try to end up getting at least one of those. Cincinnati was one of the games that I circled as a huge game for Iowa State. Excuse me. Ooh, I really needed that water. Cincinnati was a game that I circled as an extremely important game for Iowa State, largely because of the fact that you're going on the road and then you're going to be going to Colorado right after that. Nonetheless, like I said, I think Iowa State's ceiling is probably 11 wins, maybe 10. I definitely think they can get to double-digit wins this season. I think their floor is probably about 8. realistically, maybe you could go down to 7. That's where a lot of the models have them predicted right now. But I really think they're between 8 and 10 wins. Kansas State, can they get that done? In this hypothetical scenario, they lose to Iowa State, of course. They're probably going to get North Dakota and Arizona, but Army, who knows? Maybe they go into their bye 2-2. You got UCF, Baylor, TCU. I think TCU is going to be very good this year. I think Baylor is going to be challenging. So let's say hypothetically they win just one of those. Let's try to keep it about as even as we can. I about said they lost both. Let's not get too crazy. They're 2-2. They win one of those. They do. I'm going to say they beat UCF. So then that takes them from 2-2 to 4-3, and then they've got Kansas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Utah, and Colorado to close out the year. If Colorado is anything like they've kind of looked like with the transfer portal, same thing with Texas Tech, I think they probably drop both of those games. Kansas, you never know what's going to happen with. Let's say they beat them there, but maybe Utah snags them. Okay, so they go 2-3 through that stretch. They go from 2-2, then they have their first bye, then they go to 4-3, and then they go into another bye 4-3. They split their next two, right? So that makes them 5-4, and then you've got your final 3 games. And even if you win all 3 of those, you're at Iowa State's floor, which I don't know if you will with Utah and Colorado in there. Now, that's a pretty pessimistic view for Kansas State, but I don't think that it's impossible, especially if Iowa State gets them on the road or in Dublin, which I think can happen. I really think Iowa State can win that game. I think Kansas State might not be this. Everyone seems to think Kansas State's at the top of this mountain right now, which is just wild to me. I do not understand that, especially because of how parity-driven the Big 12 is. I am inclined to think Kansas State probably not going to finish first just because everyone is talking about it. That's who everyone has winning this league. I don't see it. I don't see it. And no hate to Christian out there on our Farmageddon Friday. He might see this and come for me. I get it. Okay. No hate to Christian. I just don't know if Kansas State is that team. The way he's laying it out, they sound really good. They really do. If you haven't listened, we've been doing this the last, I don't even know how long, 4 or 5 Fridays. We've been breaking down each team, each position. They sound good, but are they this good? Are they that much better than Arizona State? Are they that much better than Texas Tech? It's yet to be seen for me. So really, I think you could probably push Iowa State up to maybe 3 here. I don't think that's unreasonable. And you would essentially what you'd be doing is pushing Kansas State to 4. You'd kind of flip, switch Kansas State way down and slide everyone else up. I think Arizona State at 1 makes the most sense to me. Texas Tech being right in that conversation as well does make a lot of sense, but only time will tell as far as how the chips actually fall. But boy, Kansas State at 1. A lot of people are talking about it. Let me know if you agree down below, because I just don't see how that could. I don't think that's going to happen, to be completely honest with you. I really don't. I just don't see it. That's just me. All right, we're going to talk about Jet Tamala and his comments about Iowa State coming up right after this. All right, time to pivot here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're talking about Jet Tamala. Had some comments after being recruited to Alabama and committing over there after having been committed to Iowa State. You're here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. These comments, a little shocking to me, and we're going to talk about why I think that these are kind of not crazy, but maybe not based in fact. I will see. Okay, we'll see exactly how I end up phrasing it. Let's talk about what Jet Tamala had to say first, because he had a few quotes here. He said, quote, "I have all good things to say about Iowa State too, with everything I went through with them. It really just came down to the wire. Just the opportunity I had with Alabama. My goal and dream is to go to the NFL, and I feel like Alabama is the place that would do it best for me." Put that in your pocket. Don't let that go anywhere. Also, he said, quote, "We had such a good relationship that it wasn't too hard when talking about the conversation with Iowa State. said they kind of understood. There was no hard feelings. They kind of just told me good luck, and it wasn't really easy to say. It was pretty tough for me, but I got through it. Kudos, Jet Tamala. It seems like it would be pretty tough. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know if I personally would be able to have that conversation. That is a hard conversation to have. So I mean that when I say, kind of kudos for that. I I I wonder if anyone's ever like been committed and then just like switched their commitment and never told the school that they decommitted from, like, hey, I'm going somewhere else. I imagine they'd have to, right? You'd have to think, unless they could do it all through paperwork. If you were, I mean, for me, the concept of being recruited to two different schools is mind blowing. So I don't even know if I could wrap my head around it. But I wonder how that would all play out. Nonetheless, getting a little bit off track here. His first comment, talking about how Alabama is the place to go to the NFL. I don't know if I necessarily 100% agree here. Obviously, Alabama is kind of known for getting guys to the NFL. That's for sure. But it's not like Iowa State doesn't have anybody in the NFL either. Malik Verdon, Jake Hummel, Charlie Kohler, TJ Tampa, David Montgomery, Jaden Higgins, Xavier Hutchinson, and Jalen Noel. Obviously, the Cyclones in Texas, in Houston. Jalen Travis, I think he's going to be very, very good. Steve-O Klotz, Miles Purchase, Gerard Hufford, Darian Porter. I mean, the list goes on. I haven't even gotten to Brees Hall, Alan Lazard, Will McDonald, Brock Purdy. Shout out Ben Nickel. Like a lot of these guys, J.R. Singleton, like this list is long, okay? And I think it's only going up, to be completely honest. I think we're only seeing more guys get to the NFL. So I was surprised, honestly, that there were no comments made about the financial situation. Smart play from Jet Tamala. You don't necessarily need to get into that, even if that was the reason. Just stay away from that if you are him. I think that's probably what was advised of him and what was the best play for him. But I do wonder if that was a role, if it played a role in that whole situation. Can't help but think about that. But when he says basically it came down to playing for the in the NFL, I'm not going to say that going to Alabama is going to stop you from going to the NFL. I'm not going to say that. You'd have to probably take the microphone away from me if I said that. That's just silly. Doesn't make any sense. But I don't think that my argument here is that going to Iowa State isn't going to hurt your odds of going to the NFL, if you ask me. I think Iowa State is a great place to go if you want to develop into one of the best players you can be. And I guess this is a pitch for all other recruits out there, realistically, because, I mean, that's just the concept that Iowa State doesn't put guys in the NFL is outdated. It's incorrect. It's just not true. Boy, we've got a ton of guys in the NFL currently and a ton of guys that are on their way. Now, I understand maybe if you want to look at it from the quarterback angle, okay, we could probably have that conversation. Brock Purdy, the only one here. Hunter Deckers also potentially depends on what camp you fall in. Do you count him or not? Me personally, I'm going to count him, but not quite as loud as Brock Purdy. But I think Rocco is going to be in the NFL, and we just had that conversation today. I think Rocco is going to be a great NFL quarterback. So, and I think it's also coming down the line too for all sorts of, just depending on who sticks around at Iowa State and who counts. I really think Iowa State is going to start pushing guys into the NFL like crazy. I think Iowa State, with where they're at in the Big 12, they're where they're at with recruiting, which obviously I'm going to talk about here in a second. But how good they are right now, how good they're going to be in a few years, I think you're going to start to see a lot more guys from Ames, Iowa in the NFL. When you're watching NFL games and it's like they do the thing at the beginning and they're like, name and where you're from, and someone shouts out like Iowa State University, and you just kind of lose your mind and you're like, oh my gosh, that was sweet. Yeah, pretty soon we're going to be like, another one. The whole defense is all from Iowa State. Literally every single lineman's from Iowa State. Literally all the wide receivers are from Iowa State. Like, that's going to start becoming a reality just because of how good Iowa State is now and will be over the next 5 years. Let that sink in. And I mean it. Go answer the door. No, it's the concept that Iowa State is a bad place to go if you want to go to the NFL. That's not true, and I'm not saying that that's what Jet Tamala said, but I wanted to clear the air a little bit because we've seen guys go to the NFL, and I think we're going to see them go at a much greater rate over the next few years as well. Now, as far as Iowa State in the 2026 recruiting class, still hanging on. Now, the decommitment from Jet Tamala did hurt Iowa State's ranking for 24/7 Sports. Iowa State coming in at 37, with 16 or 17 commits here. 16 3-stars is what I've got here. 3 schools from the Big 12 ahead of Iowa State: Kansas, Arizona State, and on this website from 24/7 Sports, Texas Tech. Depends on who you look at, who you ask. Iowa State might be ranked higher or lower. But really what I think we're looking at here is that Iowa State's having one of its strongest recruiting classes, and the loss of Jet Tamala makes it seem like it's really kind of a failure. Maybe some people are thinking that. I don't think that's the case at all. I still think Iowa State is very strong in this class, and that just shows that over the next 3, 4, 5 years, not only is Iowa State gaining momentum, but you're going to start to see these recruits, and obviously the transfer portal is going to be involved, elevate the play of Iowa State, which is going to make it easier to recruit guys through the transfer portal and from high school. It's this snowball effect that we've talked about before, and I think is very real. I do think that Iowa State will get better with time, and then they'll get better because of that, and then they'll get better because of that. Right? Does that make sense? It's this cause and effect relationship, transitive property. Iowa State winning the Pop-Tart Bowl literally directly leads to them winning a championship in the next 10 years. I don't think that's ridiculous. Some are going to tell me it's ridiculous. I don't think that's too ridiculous. That being said, what I do think is ridiculous, I just got a thing in the mail. Yeah, paper mail. It said you haven't hit subscribe yet down below. It's completely free, and you help prove it's a Cyclone state. Be sure to do that on the way out, because that's going to do it for today's episode. I'll see you guys back here for more tomorrow for some more Iowa State content and news. We'll talk about it then. Until next time, Cyclone fans.